November 11th, 1813, the Battle of Crysler's Farm. On November 11th, 1813, the British and Canadian forces defeated the United States Army at the Battle of Crysler's Farm. The British victory was notable for how vastly outnumbered the defenders were. They had 900 soldiers to the invading Americans, who assembled an army of over 8,000 strong. This large-scale invasion of the St. Lawrence River region was schemed up by the Secretary of War, John Armstrong, Jr., a former soldier in the Revolutionary War, who was made a brigadier general by President James Madison at the start of the War of 1812 and appointed him to the cabinet position. Armstrong, who was originally in charge of defending the port of New York City when he was appointed the Secretary of War, he decided to leave Washington, D.C. unprotected by the Army and move most of it to the United States-Canadian border because he felt the British would invade the capital. He originally planned on leading the Army in their goal of capturing Montreal, but he gave this command to General James Wilkinson, another Revolutionary War veteran, who was appointed the command at the start of the War of 1812. Wilkinson's claim to fame was befriending Aaron Burr and later testifying against him when he tried to set up an independent country between the United States and New Spain. The invasion of the St. Lawrence region got off to a rocky start when an invading force led by Major General Wade Hampton was defeated by a smaller group of British soldiers and Mohawk warriors at the Battle of Chateauguay on October 26. Wade Hampton, who probably bought his commission as a general due to being one of the richest men in the country, he also owned the most slaves in the United States as well. Despite outnumbering the enemy 2-1, he got his soldiers lost in the forest where they were easily picked off by the British and Mohawks. The British and Canadian defenders were led by British Brigadier General Joseph Wanton Morrison. He, along with his 900 soldiers, fought the invading United States Army in minor skirmishes for several days before making camp at Crysler's Farm. His defenders were supported by a small group of gunboats commanded by Captain William Mulcaster. The battle took place on early November 11th, 1813, when the American Army advanced upon the British soldiers with support from American gunboats and a naval flotilla, but due to the inclement weather, the defenders were able to hold off the much larger invading force. Even though the American Army numbered over 8,000, they were poorly trained, equipped, and armed. During the battle, they became unorganized and were confused by the terrain, weather, and the tactics used by the Mohawk and Canadian militiamen. When their ammunition began to run out, along with Brigadier General Covington being mortally wounded during the heavy fighting while trying to rally the soldiers, sealed the fate of the Americans. The retreating Americans fled in the rainstorm and hopped back into their boats that brought them there as fast as they could, while others abandoned their rifles and swam across the river, while many of the wounded were left to fend for themselves. When the battle was declared over, the United States Army lost 102 soldiers in action. 237 were wounded, and 120 were captured by the British. The British and Canadian defenders lost 31 soldiers, and 148 were wounded in action. The battle was disastrous for General Wilkinson, whose invasion force failed to reach their destination of Montreal, and after being defeated by a much smaller British army at the Battle of Lacolle Mills in March of 1814, he was court-martialed and later left the army after being cleared of all charges. The victorious British general, Joseph Wanton Morrison, would later be severely wounded at the Battle of Niagara in July of 1814. Years later, he would participate in the First Burma War and die from malaria in 1826.